I'm Ann Croker, writing coach. If you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. If you're a regular, welcome back. Today you've joined hundreds of established and emerging writers who are discovering ways to reach their writing goals and have fun by being more curious, creative, and productive. You're listening to the Ann Croker Writing Coach podcast. This is episode 270, 15 tips to make the most of your next or first writers conference while at the event. I made a last-minute decision heading to the most recent writers conference I attended. I'd planned to take my classy, professional, sleek gray backpack that I'd purchased to replace the OG purple one I mentioned in an earlier episode. As I loaded it, I realized that to stay fortified, I needed to carry snacks and lunch each day, maybe even dinner, and it wouldn't all squeeze into the professional-looking slim gray bag. I needed a bigger backpack. I dug around in my closet and I found an older, different, ridiculously large purple backpack that I use for long trips. It wasn't professional looking at all, but my lunches would fit just right. So I showed up at this much anticipated writing festival with a purple backpack after all. And podcast listeners attending the conference would stop me. They'd heard the episode about planning and packing for a writing event. They'd shout, "The purple backpack!" And I'd say, "You're a listener!" And we'd have a great time talking about writing. So that is my first of 15 tips, some of which are super practical, like this one. Tip number 1, make sure your bag is big enough. Test your bag to ensure it's big enough to hold all the things you plan to carry with you each day, even if you're not going to look as professional as you'd like, plus whatever swag you collect along the way. This probably should have been in the planning episode, but anyway, don't worry if it looks a little odd. People really do recognize you in a crowd if you have a memorable bag, purple or otherwise. Tip number 2, tuck your business cards behind your name tag. Someone shared this pro tip with me years ago. When you go to the registration table, you'll get a name tag attached to a lanyard. So pull out 5 or 6 of your business cards and tuck them behind your conference-designed name tag in the plastic holder clipped to the lanyard, but facing out. So then when the tag inevitably spins around, people can always see your name. One side is your name on the conference-designed name tag. The other, if it flips around, will show the front of your own business card. And your cards will be convenient to slip out and hand to someone without fumbling around in a bag. And you can tuck other people's business cards behind yours when you swap to avoid losing them. And then at the end of the day, you pull out other people's cards, add their names to your contacts app, and replenish your own cards for the next day. Tip 3, decide which sessions to attend. If you haven't done this already, plan which sessions you want to attend and mark those in your conference binder. I like to pick sessions featuring industry experts I want to learn from or people I admire. This could be authors or publishing house representatives like a marketing executive or an acquisitions editor. Circle the sessions you think are ideal for you, but tip number 4, stay open to adapting the plan. Making a plan but staying flexible can help you feel less rigid, more open to serendipity, or as Laura Fabrici suggested I share with you, stay open to interruptions and sheer surprises. One morning at a recent conference, I planned to attend poet Chris Wyman's session. In fact, I had made tentative plans to meet up with a friend. I needed to allow, maybe a 5 or 10 minute walk from the main gathering area. As I was making some tea, I got to talking with authors Summer Gross and Lori Melton. Summer's book was about to be released, and we hadn't seen each other in person for several years. Then Lori and I had connected at a conference years ago, and we were enjoying these moments to catch up. Well, we were deep into the conversation when I looked at my watch and realized there was no way I was going to make it to see Chris Wyman, or I'd have to slip in really late. And so Summer said, "Are you going to the Madeleine L'Engle session?" I said, "What do you mean the Madeleine L'Engle session?" "Her granddaughter's speaking about an unpublished book. It's in this building, in the boardroom." Well, that I could make on time. I had read the conference schedule and marked it all up, but somehow it didn't sink in who Charlotte Jones Voiceless was. So I followed Summer and Lori to the session, texted my friend that I'd lost track of time, and ended up loving every minute. I'm glad I stayed open to sheer surprises. Thankfully, the friend who attended Chris's session said it was just what she needed. Another time, I went to the wrong room and ended up in a session other than the one I intended, but it too provided me with just what I needed. We can make our plans, but it's okay to alter those plans, especially if we choose an opportunity that presents itself and it leads to rewarding interactions and unexpected outcomes. Even mishaps and miscalculations can yield surprising results. The wrong room might turn out to be the right room. Tip number 5, say hi to at least one person. Writers can be dreadfully shy. Challenge yourself to say hello to the person next to you in each session. That person may be as nervous as you are, but this is a big reason to attend these events, to meet people. Who knows? Maybe they'll become famous later and you might meet a writing friend or connect with someone who becomes an endorser of a book that you're going to release in a couple of years. So be brave and say hello. And if you chat for a few minutes and it seems appropriate, hand that person a business card and invite them to stay in touch. Tip number 6, ask one question. When you're in a session, listen closely, take excellent notes. If you're new to publishing, write down terminology that's new to you so you can look it up later. As you're listening, think to yourself, if there's a Q&A, what one specific question will I ask? This question should be based on what they just said, demonstrating you are listening intently, that you truly care about what they were saying, and you'd like them to elaborate on something, to clarify a point. Make this question short, specific, and different enough that it's not an obvious question that anybody might ask, and make sure you really want to know the answer. Then write down your question, which leads us to tip number 7, ask your one question. The first option within this is to ask in front of everyone. Usually at the end of a talk, the audience gets to ask questions. Depending on the size of the room, the organizer might pass around a microphone, or audience members might walk up to a microphone on a stand and wait in line to ask their questions. If the room's small, audience members might just raise their hands and speak up so everyone in the room can hear them. Good thing you'll follow through with tip number 6 and write down your question, because you might get nervous and worry that you're going to fumble. Well, let's say they call on people in the crowd. Raise your hand. When they call on you, stand up. It's going to make it easier for people to see and to hear you. And if the organizers set out a mic on a stand, go for it. Go wait in line. And when it's your turn, state your full name. Hi, I'm Ann Croker. What this does is it puts a name with your face, and then later they may remember Ann Croker, the person who asked that question and carried a purple backpack. Now, here's the thing. Don't add a preamble or spend a lot of time thanking them. After you introduce yourself, simply smile and ask the question. Now, option B is you might have to ask after the talk at the front of the room. In some instances, there's no Q&A, but you might have an opportunity to go down to the front and interact with the speaker after the talk. And if they seem open to chatting with people, head down there with your question in hand. And if others are milling around, shaking hands, asking questions, well, watch for your chance and don't be too scared or shy. Introduce yourself, ask the question, and have your business card at the ready in case they ask. And it's easy enough if it's in your plastic name tag holder behind your conference name tag, right? If no one else is waiting and the speaker doesn't seem to be in a hurry, you could maybe continue chatting, because sometimes your question leads the conversation in a certain direction and they have a story to tell you. Now you're more than a random audience member. Now you're one literary person chatting with another. And this is one of the many things that is magic about in-person events. There is an option C regarding your question. You can ask it if you bump into them. There may be many reasons you didn't get to ask your question during the session, like maybe they didn't offer Q&A, or they did and you didn't get a chance to ask yours before everybody else did, or maybe the speaker rushed off to their next appointment. You might still have a chance. Faculty is brought into these events to offer input, to give their talks, to encourage writers, and to answer questions. So sometimes they might be sitting at a lunch table and they're supposed to be there to meet and interact with attendees. So you, as an attendee, find an open chair at the table where the person is, where you want to ask your question. Introduce yourself, chat with them, and ask your question. Or if you find yourself standing next to them at the coffee station, introduce yourself and ask your question then. If this person is a literary agent or an acquisitions editor, you might be tempted to pitch. Oh, friend, resist. Unless they ask what brought you to the event or what you're working on, okay, then by all means you could share your hook. And if they're interested and they ask for more, follow their lead. But don't haunt or hound any faculty. Actually, don't haunt or hound anyone, to be clear. Most conferences warn people, don't follow agents into the restroom and talk to them outside a closed stall door. And everyone laughs, but they say it because it happens. It does. So be patient. At many writing events, you're going to find an occasion to chat at a more appropriate location. Now, why the one specific question? You might have multiple questions, and that's great. If you have a lunch table chat, you might get to ask them all. But some people are too nervous to ask even one question, and they might miss a chance to connect if they don't write that out ahead of time. And limiting it to one keeps you from accidentally dominating that brief time of Q&A by asking too many. Be yourself. Be relaxed, be real. You'll leave a good impression as a real human who obviously enjoyed what the speaker had to say. Why else would you ask such a specific, pertinent, and thoughtful question, right? Asking is a way to connect as humans who love literature, who love words, who love ideas and writing. It's a way to compliment their work and thank them for being at the event without really actually having to compliment them or thank them. Just asking the question alone does that. Tip number 8. If you can't connect with the main person, connect with their friend. You see that famous author and you want to introduce yourself and ask a question, but as soon as their talk is over, they head out the back way. Notice if they're traveling with anyone. Do they have an assistant, a friend, a family member that's with them? If that person seems approachable, just sidle up and say hello, introduce yourself, ask innocuous questions about their work, the assistant's work. And maybe you'll learn something about their role that interests you. Maybe while you're chatting with them, you can say you had a question you hoped to ask. Is there a time during the conference when that speaker will be taking questions? This person will know, and who knows, maybe they'll put you in contact with that famous author for just a few minutes later in the day or later at the event. If not, it's always a great idea to get to know these assistants because the assistants are often the ones who can open doors for you later. Tip number 9, decide how late you'll stay up. At the end of every day of the conference, you're likely going to be exhausted from walking around all day, taking all those notes from the social interaction. If you're an introvert, you might be excited about potential publishing opportunities or overwhelmed by the flood of information. You might be discouraged, thinking you're not ready. You may want to curl up in your hotel room to rest and rejuvenate for day 2 of the conference. And then someone invites you to join them for dinner or to go out for drinks with a group of poets. Decide in advance what you're going to do, and then try to gauge if you'll stay open to those invitations or you'll kindly turn them down. Tip number 10, plan ahead with your traveling companions. Attending with a friend or friends adds layers of fun. You can swap ideas, go to different sessions, introduce each other to people you meet. You'll want to discuss how to handle these energy levels. Some of your traveling companions may want to retire early. Others might be ready to stay up late and party. Have the conversation sooner rather than later about who's going to do what. If you ride together, work out what to do if one of you gets an invitation and the others don't. Will they need the same invitation? Is that possible? Can they get to the hotel without you if you go out with other people? Discuss potential scenarios in advance to avoid frustration. Work with them on alternative transportation, or if you're the one depending on others, create contingency plans related to logistics. Tip number 11, take selfies and group photos. Even if you don't normally snap selfies, take some with speakers and other writers you meet. Get their contact information and permission to share on social media. If you swap business cards, take a quick peek. Is their photo on there? No? Okay, scribble something on the card to remind yourself who they are, and then you can make the connections when you start to share it. During or after the event, be sure to tag that person if you post it somewhere online. If you have a particularly nice photo that you don't share, it gives you a reason to email it to them. Tip number 12, enjoy your pitch session. You've practiced your pitch for weeks. You had a friend help you design a memorable one-sheet. Now you're at the event and you can hardly concentrate because you're so nervous, afraid it's your one and only chance at a yes. First, relax. That'll help your pitch. And it's not your one and only chance. You'll be able to connect with agents in many different ways, even submitting through their online portal after you get home. If you happen to interact with the person you're pitching beforehand, don't pitch them then. We've talked about that. Simply tell them, hey, I'm your 2:00 tomorrow. That brief interaction will give you a more comfortable starting point when you do meet because the initial introduction is out of the way. Show up a little early at check-in or whatever that event's system is. When you're able to join them at their table, show up, smile, let them kick things off. Chances are they're going to ask you to tell them what you're working on, and that's your cue to share your hook. When pitching, start with your hook and then pause for the agent or AE to ask questions. Be ready to summarize your book's description and your platform, but then avoid anything else overly practiced or memorized, because overall, you want this to be a normal conversation about the project and about yourself. You want to connect with them as you chat, so hand them your one sheet at the end, not the beginning, unless they ask for it, of course. Think of it as something to leave behind rather than to hand them before you begin. Otherwise, they're going to be tempted to look at it while you're talking instead of interacting with you. They can always look at the one sheet later. Tip number 13, make lists at the end of the day. It's tempting to think you'll retain everything you learned, but as one session follows another, the information starts to blur and get lost. At the end of the day, take a few minutes to process the day and jot down key ideas you want to carry with you into the next day and post-conference. For example, did you learn about platform from one of the speakers? Write down any action steps they recommended so you can follow through with them when you get home. And I recommend converting notes into simple lists of action points and quotable quotes, excerpts from speakers you might want to share on social media. And when you'll tag them, by the way, and use the event hashtag for wider reach. Also, keep a list of people you want to follow up with after the event. Do you want to email them or mail them a letter? Make a note about what you want to do when you get home. And follow everybody on social media that you met that day. That's a fun way to stay in touch right away and say hello. You could DM them a little hello if you have a few minutes, saying how delighted you were to meet them that day. If you don't have much energy or time at the end of a day, identify the one thing you're going to implement from each session. Tip number 14, do this when you get home. It's easy to attend these things, get hit with the fire hose of information, and then do nothing with it. I want you to make the most of your investment of time and money. But first, when you arrive back home, toss some laundry in the machine and give yourself time to decompress. So that's the first thing, decompress. Then work through your lists. That's when you can start to pull out all those end-of-day lists that you made and start to work your way through them or make a plan to work through them. Write letters. It's a good time to write letters while your ideas and the recipients are fresh on your mind. And you have the addresses probably all spread out when you're sorting your business cards. If you had a pitch session, no matter how you felt it went, send a note to the literary agent or AE thanking them for their time and advice. And did you make a new literary friend? Send them a note or email to say how glad you are to have made that connection. Don't be afraid to propose an idea. For example, if you want to form a writing group with people you meet at the event, ask them if they're interested. In fact, write a note to each speaker you met who shared their contact information, every literary agent you pitched, every acquisitions editor you connected with. This is a great time. The time's perfect, actually, because they'll get that shortly after they get home as well. Follow people on social. Follow and interact with people on social media. At the last event I attended, I noticed many people put all their photos together into a vertical video and then posted it as an Instagram reel or a TikTok after the event. A few people would post them in stories. So if you took selfies with others, remember tip number 11, you can send them a copy via email and or share it on social media. Then document this whole thing in your journal. If you did not have time to journal during the writing event, document anything significant in a diary or journal now that you're home. Tip number 15, update and send your proposal. Did somebody request your proposal? Excellent! Based on what you learned from speakers and in pitch sessions, you may want to tweak your book proposal, your one sheet, or your query. Then send it off. They'll have many proposals to go through, though, so give them plenty of time to review, but congratulations to you. If you realize the literary agent at the event seemed like a great fit, but you didn't get a chance to pitch, go ahead and reach out and let them know you were impressed with their session and you were sorry you couldn't meet. Let them know you plan to follow the steps outlined on their website to query or submit your proposal, and they might be more likely to notice it when it shows up in their system or in their inbox. You might also update your About page after getting ideas in one of the sessions you attend, so it looks good when people search your name or click through from your proposal. Maybe you'll want to change the wording on your homepage or your newsletter sign-up form. You learned a lot at the conference, but you won't be able to take all the advice all at once. Create a punch list to work your way through over time. Improve, tweak, add, subtract. Make your proposal and your online presence the strongest possible with your newfound knowledge and the advice that you took in. The event where I ended up in this session led by Madeleine L'Engle's granddaughter, a session I hadn't even selected. I reconnected with old friends and met some new friends. After the closing keynote, I drove the 5 hours home with a contented smile on my face, thrilled to have connected with word lovers from all walks of life. And that's what I hope for you too. I hope you leave any event you get to attend with a contented smile on your face, happy to connect with word lovers from all walks of life, ready for your next steps. It's truly a joy to spend time with writers. Now load up that backpack and have fun. Occasionally, I have the honor of being on faculty at writing events. The best way to find out where I'll be is to subscribe to my coaching newsletter at anncroker.com/connect. That's anncroker.com/connect. And I'm Ann Croker, cheering you on as a writing coach in your ear. Everywhere we may meet, at my website, here on this podcast, in your inbox, or even in person at a conference, I'm always looking for ideas to share with you that will help you achieve your writing goals and have fun by being more curious, creative, and productive. Thank you for being here.